Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and this is the Kiwi Ears Quintet. No, it's not the Quartet, which is an IM I reviewed just like a month ago. This is the Quintet, which is an all-new IM. It's Quartet plus one, but honestly, this IM is frankly a lot more than just Quartet plus one. I mean, for starters, the Quintet that we've got here is using a pretty unique driver configuration. It's got 4 different types of drivers, but honestly, more to the point, it's just, I reviewed the Quartet. I didn't really love it that much, but the Quintet here, I pretty much dig this one. So for the past few weeks, I've been living with and listening to the Quintet and just trying to figure out how does it slot into Kiwi Ears' lineup, because I don't know, this year they've been pretty prolific, and I thought it would be a good time to step back and compare it to some of their other IMs, and that's what we're going to talk about here in this video. Now, unlike all of my other reviews, this one's not actually a live stream. I am recording this one ahead of time, and the reason for that is that, well, I'm actually going to be losing access to this space. I don't have a lot of time right now, and it's probably going to be a while before you see another live stream from me. That said, if you want to keep up with me live, I recommend, as always, join me on Discord. I've got it linked in the description down below. We're there all day having conversations. If you have questions about the Quartet, the Quintet, whatever we talk about today, that's a good place to do it. Or, of course, you can try the YouTube comments, but let's get past that for now. All right, grieve while you can, and let's just dive into this review. But first of all, a quick shout out to Linsol Audio for sending in the Quintet for review. If you want to check out the Quintet, I've got them linked in the description down below. And by down below, well, here's our down below. Let's talk about the Quintet. Well, first let's talk about what comes inside the box, and this is the box itself. We'll talk about the physical aspects of this IM, and then we'll get into talking about the sound signature, what I like, what I don't like, and then how it compares to some other Kiwi Ears IMs. So yeah, what you get inside the box is what you see here. You get the same case that was included with the Quartet, which is a, fairly small, a little bit on the compact side. I would say this is pocketable. But yeah, a little small little carry case, a little bit hard on the outside, but I don't know, nothing fancy here, but I dig that because it's actually useful for me. Apart from that, well, you get 2 different styles of ear tips, which we can highlight here for you. They're both a silicone ear tip, so there's no foam ear tips in here, which is fine by me, but if you're looking for foam ear tips, you might need to supply your own. But they are 2 different styles of silicone ear tips. So what you have over here is just your more traditional style ear tip with, I would say, a medium bore. And then here you've got a wider bore, shorter ear tip. I don't know if that totally comes across, but these are both larges, and you can kind of see that the shorter one is shorter by probably 1.5 millimeters, maybe 2 millimeters. And that might not seem like a ton, but it really does make a pretty big difference for fit. And I think that is smart to include 2 different types of ear tips in the box, because honestly, I've talked about this before. I really do think that there is a lot of value in having a lot of ear tips on hand, so that just with any IM you get, go through all the ear tips and find the one that fits you the best. At least here they've included 2 different styles, so you can find hopefully the one that fits you the best. But me personally, as you can see, I didn't use those ear tips. I'm using, these are SpinFit CP360s, but that is neither here nor there. It's not really about the sound, it's just about the fit for me. But apart from that stuff, that's all that's inside the box apart from the IM itself. So let's get into talking about the build quality of this IM, and like we typically do, we will start by describing this cable. And honestly, I would say this cable is just okay, in my opinion. It's a little bit on the spindly side. I don't know if you can kind of see it. It's a little kink prone, I suppose. It's on the thin side, which is generally something I like, but I don't know. There's something about the materials plus the thinness of this cable that makes it just a little bit kind of ratty looking. I don't know. I don't love this cable. It's not a bad cable, but I don't love it. It does rotary wrap a-okay, as you can see. Like it's not stiff or anything like that. It's just a little bit memory prone and doesn't look particularly tidy. You do have nice, small, compact hardware on here, which I appreciate. You've got, here's your Y split. You have a functional chin slider that stays in place. I appreciate that. I feel like companies are getting better at that. Maybe because we keep complaining about it. And then you've, of course, got your preformed 2-pin ear hooks up top. So yes, this is a 2-pin cable. If you wanted to swap out this cable for another, you could just as easily do that. I wouldn't do it for sound differences. Just do it because you like another cable. But yeah, I don't know. That's the cable in a nutshell. So let's talk now about these earpieces. And well, I don't know. Kiwi Ears is, they're kind of hit or miss when it comes to their earpieces. Generally, they're like really good with the ergonomics aspects of it, and like the build quality is usually pretty good too, but it's more just in the aesthetics where, I don't know, they're not quite there. And I think that the Kiwi Ears Quintet here is kind of an example of that, of the aesthetics not being quite there. As you can see, it's a pretty plain looking IM. I do appreciate that they at least have an asymmetrical pattern, right? Where they've got their Kiwi Ears logo on this side and then the word Quintet on this side. But as you can see, they are otherwise pretty plain, just big slabs of this gray. I'm pretty sure it's like an anodized aluminum or something like that. It's a nice build quality, and aesthetically it's not offensive by any stretch of the imagination, but it does feel a little bit unfinished. It feels a little prototypey in my opinion. Apart from the shells on the outside, you have these dark plastic shells on the inside, and it is a somewhat, I would say, a semi-custom, fairly opinionated shape. And by opinionated, I just mean that you can see that it's got like this ear hook back here that taps into the back of the concha. It's got a little bit of finning for grabbing onto the antitragus, but and also, you know, a relatively long nozzle. But oh, let's just talk about the fit on this IM real quick. All right, I would say that the fit, the ingress and egress of this, as you can see, is nice and easy, right? That plugs in nice and easy. No problems there. I would say that fit security is actually pretty good because of that opinionated shape. It fits well into my ear, at least. And I think it will fit in most, you know, for the ears for whom it works, it's going to lock in very well and nice and stable. Now, where I do have a little bit of qualms with the earpiece on this is just in terms of long-term comfort. I would say initially, I have no issues with comfort. Like right now, it feels great. But this isn't, again, I mentioned it's kind of an opinionated shape over longer listening sessions. I'm talking like a couple of hours, or honestly, like I sleep with IM, so like that's where I mostly ran into the listening comfort issues with this particular design. Over a couple of hours, it will start to just get a little bit grating in terms of, you know, how it fits in inside my ear. But I don't know. It's not a bad earpiece, but I would say it is not my favorite of Kiwi Ears' earpieces. And it is interesting that they've gone with an entirely different shell design, given the fact that some of their other shells are just so dang perfect. But you know, it is what it is. It's not a big complaint. Again, it's just mostly it's because my standard is other Kiwi Ears IMs, to be frank. So yeah, let me wrap this thing up. Punch into my face awkwardly. No, let's dive to the table. And I think we're ready to talk about the sound while I struggle wrapping up this cable. Yeah, let's talk about the sound now, okay? And like I typically do, we will start by describing the sound signature, and then I'll get into talking about specifically what it is I like and what I don't like about the sound. Now, the sound signature here on the Quintet, arguably, you could call this a neutral with bass boost, but I'm gonna go ahead and stick with a mild V-shaped sound signature because it is a little bit, I'd say it's a touch on the bright side. You do still have a very clean and linear mid-range, maybe a little bit on the clinical side versus the thicker and richer side, but you also get an ample bass boost on this. Mostly, I would say the bass boost is sub-bass focused, so it's nice and clean. It's not gonna muddy up the mid-range or anything like that, but it's also not anemic in the mid-bass, whereas a lot of sub-bass focused boosted IMs I do find to feel a little bit anemic down there. This one, I think, keeps a pretty decent, it toes that line well. It gives you a decent sense of punch with, honestly, just even more sense of that wub if you're into that. Now up top, again, I mentioned the sound's a little bit on the bright side, and I would say it sounds to me a little bit brighter than it graphs. And this is why, you know, I listen to IMs and I don't just review graphs. I would say vocals are generally pretty present, slightly on the forward side, and that slight treble emphasis does contribute to that overall clean and clinical sound. And overall, I would just say that this is a fun sound signature, you know, whereas, okay, I'm not gonna take any crap from anyone that says that neutral is boring, but if you're afraid of neutral being boring, I don't think you're gonna find the Quintet to be boring. So that's the sound signature. What do I like about the sound here on the Kiwi Ears Quintet? And well, a fun sounding IM, I like fun, okay? Clean and a little bit bright, that's kind of exactly up my alley. I find that this is just The tonal balance is nice and easy to appreciate the mid-range nuances. It has a high level of what I would describe as transparency or resolution, right? Just kind of like the sense that you're seeing through the music, especially if you're into vocal content like I am. I would say that the bass, not just the top end, the bass is also really pretty fun on this. It's tight, it's fast, it's kind of got a bit of a sense of bounciness to it. And again, despite the fact that the bass is mostly sub-bass focused, I think there is enough mid-bass here for just kind of a consistent presence in regardless of the music that you're listening to. Sometimes if I'm listening to an IM that is all sub-bass focused, it will sound bassy with like certain electronic music. But then if I go to more classic music, like classic rock or probably even classical music, where there's not a lot of sub-bass content, it will just sound really thin and anemic. And I don't think that is the case here with the quintet. So it rides that line pretty well. And I would say that the bass even has like a decent sense of physicality to it. Things like kick drums, and especially live performances, they've got that sense of woof, woof, like they're moving air, which is one of the things I really like to see in bass. And then that bright tilt to the sound signature that I described, it contributes to what I would say is a very solid technical performance on this IM. You get a stronger than average separation between sounds. So if you're into that thing, and you probably know that is one of the things I usually index pretty high for, is I want to hear sounds just really cleanly separated, and the quintet does a really good job of that. It gives you also just a really strong sense of incisiveness on the attack, which means that, and this is what's contributing to that separation between sounds, right? If there's a drum strike, a guitar pull, even just like a vocal chord, the initial bite of that sound is very, very well delineated. I think it also contributes to a fairly wide stereo image. Maybe the image definition is a little bit less strong than the width of it, which just means that, like, I don't know, while things are nice and separated, and again, they sound fairly wide in the head, localizing them to specific locations isn't necessarily where this thing excels. It's just more in the width and the separation itself. Now, what do I not like about the sound here on the quintet? And of course, I've got some things I can nitpick. Honestly, I would say the number one thing, and maybe this is the only thing, is it can just be kind of a little bit overstimulating. The treble texturing on this IM, I would say, is a little bit on the aggressive side, maybe even a little bit gritty. It can give the sound a little bit of an over-sharpened sound, a little bit artificial, and it's kind of a, I don't know, I guess you could call it a unique timbre that contributes to that incisiveness that I described as being a positive, but it does come across sometimes like a, kind of like an over-sharpened picture. I don't know if you've seen like a photo out of like a Samsung smartphone or something like that, where it's just a little bit over-sharpened, a little bit artificial, and a little bit harsh to look at. Okay, no, a little bit harsh to listen to. And I would say that in combination with that fit that I described as being a little bit fatiguing, it does make the quintet an earphone that, I don't know, I kind of got to be ready for. I got to be in the mood for. It's not like a put it on and relax earphone. It's a get serious and dive into it earphone. And for that reason, it can honestly be a little bit fatiguing and not be the kind of earphone I want to listen to all day. But that is just the general thoughts here on the quintet. Now, how does it compare to some of Kiwi Ears' other earphone? And I do believe that was the correct combination of S's in Kiwi Ears'. But yeah, let's pull in some other Kiwi Ears IMs that have come out this year. Arguably, I could also include the Cadenza. I believe the Cadenza came out late last year, but I think it's not quite in the ballpark of these IMs. So let's play it fair, and let's talk about how these three Kiwi Ears IMs stack up. So if you're in the market for specifically a Kiwi Ears IM, well, one, I think that's a weird way to shop, but I do think that this is nonetheless a useful exercise in situating yourself in the market. So of course, here we've got the Kiwi Ears Quintet. I don't know if I mentioned the price up top. This is a $220 IM. Again, it's got 4 different types of drivers, 1 dynamic driver, 2 balanced armatures, and then 2 other things. I think one of them is like a microplanar, and then one of them is a piezoelectric bone conductor or something like that. But that's what you get with this one. Here we've got the Kiwi Ears Quartet, the one I alluded to having reviewed a while ago. This one's only $110. It is a hybrid, so it's got 2 dynamic drivers and 2 balanced armatures. And then finally over here, we've got the Kiwi Ears Orchestra Lite, which is closer to this one in price. It's $250. So this is the most expensive on the table, but it's got just an all balanced armature design. In fact, it's got 8 balanced armatures in total. Now, how do they compare in terms of sound signature? Well, it's interestingly that they are all actually pretty different. So I don't know, this kind of gets into a pet peeve of mine when people describe house sounds from brands when all of their earphones sound different. I think this is just kind of a good example. There's not really much of a house sound here. The Quintet, like we just got done describing, kind of a mild V-shaped sound signature. It does have a significant bass bump, but it's mostly sub-bass focused, a little bit bright up top, and just generally clean, clinical mid-range with a little bit of an aggressive tilt on this IEM. Here with the Quartet, I would describe this one as bassy AF. It's pretty bassy IEM, okay? It's a little bit on the warm, okay, not a little bit, it's a lot on the warm, stuffy, kind of thick and congested side. It does have a decently clear top end, which is, you know, fairly impressive given how much bass there is in here, but really this one is all about the bass. And then here with the Orchestra Lite, I guess in some ways you could describe it as somewhat of an in-between of these, but it's definitely much closer to the Quintet. It is warmer mid-range than the Quintet, I think, where this, again, kind of has that bright, aggressive tilt. This has got a little bit more of a laid-back, warmer tilt to the mid-range. Just a nice, richer sound to it, but still clean, and just overall the treble is more relaxed, and so that's how this one. You know, there's still ample bass boost on the Orchestra Lite, and maybe it is even a little bit more mid-bassy versus the Quintet. In terms of technical performance, again, they're all actually pretty different. Again, the Quintet that we just got done describing really indexes quite well on separation and stereo width. It's got nice sharp transients. Sometimes it can come across a little bit too digital, but you know, that is kind of the trade-off for this level of incisiveness at this price range. And then the bass, I would say, is probably the best of the bunch. It's got a nice, sharp, fast attack. It's got a decent sense of bounce to it. And again, it gives you a little bit of that physicality to it that I dig. The Quartet, in contrast, while this has the most bass, I would say it is the worst bass of the bunch, specifically in like the definition. So if I like the definition and the sense of cleanliness of that attack on the initial, like a kick drum or something like that, that's pretty soft and woolly here on the Quartet. It's bloated, soft. The top end does, again, add a decent sense of definition and even a sense of width to the stereo image, but just overall, this is, I think, the weakest in terms of technical performance. And then in comparison, the Orchestra Lite is just, overall, it's a smooth listen, right? It does have, I would say, a good sense of stereo width, but the level of incisiveness is somewhat mediocre, especially for the price range, and especially in contrast to the Quintet. If you're looking for that really clear separation between sounds and incisiveness, the Quintet does do a better job, whereas this leans a little bit more on the richer side with a softer, more easygoing, laid-back presentation. And the bass, it doesn't have the dynamic driver definition because obviously there is no dynamic driver, but it's honestly pretty good bass for a balanced armature. And I would say the bass in this is, in my opinion, a couple of steps ahead of the bass here in the Quartet. Now, in terms of form factor, here's where we will punch on these and focus. The Quintet, again, I think the look aesthetically, it's a little bit unfinished, but in terms of fit, it's good fit security, but just does have kind of the cost of a little bit of issues with long-term comfort. And then the cable, I'm not a super big fan of. The Quartet, in contrast, I think this IM is frankly beautiful. Love, love, love the way this one looks. In fact, I would say this is my favorite looking of the bunch here on the table. It also fits fantastic in my ear. Fit security is every bit as good, if not even better, than the Quintet. And then long-term comfort, I have zero issues with. The cable on this one also, you know, not the best, but this is where this IM really does excel, is in the physical aspects. And then finally here we've got the Orchestra Lite, which I love the clear shells on these things. I love being able to see the balanced armatures inside there. It's got like this glass-like quality to it, which I really, really do dig. I do think that the outer panel here is not my ideal, largely just because they've got like the same logo on both of them. And that's also true of the Quartet, but it's a little bit more excusable on those beautiful shells. Whereas here, I don't know, it just seems like they could have taken it another step forward. Now, that said, I would say the fit security and comfort on this are basically as good as the Quartet, really just excellent, with one big caveat is that this one is not a vented IM because it is all balanced armatures. There's no vents in here. So the plus side of that is that you get really good sound isolation. And then the downside is that if you're sensitive to pressure buildup in your ears, this one might generate that more so than the others. But that's how these three IMs stack up, and that will lead us into my conclusion of the Kiwi Ears Quintet. So again, a lot to like here, and I definitely do like it better than the Quintet. Versus the Orchestra Lite, I would personally pick the Orchestra Lite, but it trades blows because it's good for, well, it's just maybe a more fun and exciting sound, and it's good with that, again, incisiveness, that separation between sounds and that stereo width, at the cost of being a little bit fatiguing and a little bit kind of artificial sounding. I think out of 5 stars, I'm gonna give the Quintet a very solid 4 stars. And if you're interested in checking it out, like I mentioned, I've got it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there fishing for that link, if you found this video helpful, you like these kinds of comparisons, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and I'll catch you on the next super review. Unless, well, okay, you're not here live, so we're not gonna have a chat. Just like I mentioned, if you want to continue these kinds of conversations and you want to ask people that know about these IMs very specific questions, I recommend joining me on Discord. You can't just talk to, I mean, you can talk to me, but you don't have to talk to me. There's a bunch of people there that are super helpful, super welcoming, and I've got that linked down below. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next super review. Have a good week.